Namaste. As the Minister for Tourism and Multicultural Affairs, it's with great pride that South Australia will host the World Hindu Economic Forum 2025 in Adelaide, the first time this important event will be held in Australia and the Southern Hemisphere. South Australia stands ready to welcome your delegates from around the world, offering a dynamic and supportive environment for economic collaboration, innovation and sustainable growth. The South Australian Government is proud to support this event and looks forward to showcasing our strengths and collaborative opportunities for the global Hindu business community. The South Australian Hindu community has been a dynamic and entrepreneurial group who have been integral to the economic success of our state. Our proud Hindu community is also well placed to be the conduit between the South Australian economy and the wider global Hindu economic community. As a delegate, not only will you get the chance to connect on an economic level, you'll be able to enjoy the offerings that Adelaide has to offer. With the iconic Adelaide Oval a stone's throw away from the Convention Centre, you will have the opportunity to experience our vibrant city, whether it is our outstanding food or scenic hills or our beaches. There is something for everyone. I also invite all Australians to join us for welcoming our delegates to Adelaide as we prepare to host and participate in a forum that promises to drive meaningful economic and social outcomes for our state and our nation. We look forward to seeing you here in 2025.
Bharat.
Namaste, Hari Om. Can I request all delegates to get to their chairs? We are running late. We want to respect each other's times. We do have lots of opportunity to network, meet fellow delegates. We have time for that. The rest as we progress during the day. The comfort breaks are basically for us to just stretch our legs, grab a drink of water, coffee, and come back in so that we can keep on time. Namaste, namaskar, marni na pudni, and for my Australian friends, how's it going? My name is Seshadri Vidyam. I'm one of the directors at the Hindu Economic Forum Australia. This topic that I'm going to talk to you about or introduce you all focuses on the strategic economic partnership between Bharat and Australia. I request the following speakers to come on stage, and please be seated. Senator Andrew McLaughlin is the Deputy President of the Australian Senate, representing South Australia since 2020. He is also a colonel in the Army Reserves and a conspicuous Service Cross recipient. His Excellency Gopal Bhagle is Bharat's High Commissioner to Australia with extensive diplomatic experience across South Asia and Europe. He has held senior roles in the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of External Affairs, Bharat. Mr. Matt Opie is the Chief Executive of Defence SA, leading South Australia's defence and space sectors since 2024. With 35 years' experience as a military officer and an industry leader, he has held senior roles at BAE Systems, Saab Australia, and Uni SA. Dr. Sanjay Mazumdar is the Executive Director of Defence Trailblazer Program and was the CEO of the Data to Decisions CRC. I now request Senator Andrew McLaughlin, CSC, to throw open the session and start with the proceedings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you for that very kind introduction and welcome. We have a star-studded panel for you today. And this session is very much about aspiration to build on the great relationship between Bharat and Australia. And in my reading for this morning, it struck me that there are two Hindu principles or restraints: honesty and truthfulness. And I might be old-fashioned, but they are the two foundation stones in all things in life to build partnership, because partnership comes from friendship. We have an amazing diplomat, and we are very grateful that Bharat has chosen him to represent the country in our own country, and he is a good friend and a Canberra resident with myself, almost with myself. I do visit my own homeland occasionally. And then we have two experts, particularly in the area of defence. Each one's going to speak for around 5 minutes about their view of our relationship, and then we will go into some questions for the panel, and then we will hand over to you for your questions. I'll start with His Excellency. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Senator McLaughlin, and namaste. Very good morning to all of you, to my distinguished fellow panelists, and of course to the moderator. A word of deep gratitude for your presence and lending your expertise and your wisdom and your steering, your presence and views to this forum. My thanks also to the organizers who have brought the World Hindu Economic Forum to the Southern Hemisphere, I'm told, for the first time, and with a remarkable turnout. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to see this forum, to be part of this forum, and be with all of you today. I must also say that every time I come to South Australia, to Adelaide, I go back with even more ideas and even more steps that we need to take to bring our economies, to bring our people closer together in the pursuit of the objectives that we share of a peaceful, predictable, prosperous region, Indo-Pacific, that we share, but also the world. So without further ado, let me make a few points, and I will then be very happy to answer questions that may come later on. First, when I started thinking about the concept of the World Hindu Economic Forum, what struck me was the concept which I had come across when I was growing up as a student back in Bharat in the 1970s and 80s, the concept of the so-called Hindu economic growth. Now, many of you would have heard of that. And I did not understand that concept too much, and certainly now, in retrospect, I do think, in my personal opinion, that concept probably was not really rooted in the history, because the history of Bharat, and Senator, you mentioned being old-fashioned, but I must mention that you are not old-fashioned. The virtues that you mentioned remain the cornerstone of not only our civilizational values, but also the way we conduct our foreign policy in the world today. And remain also the cornerstone of our partnership and friendship with key countries like Australia. So the concept of the Hindu economic growth, I thought, flew in the face of history of a rich and prosperous India, Bharat, which was the growth engine of the world for the larger part of the last 2 millennia. But also that concept had very little to do with the economic logic that a country of India's size and potential could unleash, not just for the benefit of its own people, but as a larger force for the global good. And therefore, it is a special privilege for me to be speaking to you about what India and Australia are doing together bilaterally, the two diverse democracies which respect multiculturality, which respect the values of democracy, which respect each other's strengths, and are very keenly engaged to leverage those strengths to bring prosperity not just to our own peoples of the two countries, but also, as I said earlier, to the region and to the larger world. This forum is very timely also because we are now about to enter a very active phase of our high-level political interactions. As all of you know, there is an annual Leader Summit mechanism. We look forward to receiving the Prime Minister of Australia later on when there is a Quad Leaders meeting and also the opportunity for a bilateral meeting. But before that, we look forward to a number of ministerial interactions in the field of foreign affairs, defense, and the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister of Australia has just been to India. But I must say that as we do all this, we are very happy to build on the success of the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, ECTA, which beyond bringing benefits of enhanced trade to both the countries, creating number of jobs, enhancing exports in some cases to the tune of 40% in both directions. I think what it has really done is underline the sectoral complementarities which India and Australia have. And it has given confidence to the business, and it has deepened the ties between the business of the two countries. As we now advance in the negotiations for CECA, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, what we look at is having a strategic, ambitious, and transformative CECA, which will be a bridge to the future. It will align the priorities of Bharat to be a Viksit Bharat, a developed Bharat by 2047, with the respective strengths and requirements of India and Australia. But it will also reflect the maturity of our growing comprehensive strategic partnership. I think it will be an strategic instrument for establishing diversified production networks. And we have also the representatives from defense and space in this very panel. That's very heartening. Has to be in Adelaide, which is a center for both of these industries, and where India and Australia cooperation is also growing. I leave it to my distinguished panelists to speak more about that. But a CECA that will also see scaling up of the economies and equity and equality in mutually beneficial trade, as well as economic integration, larger economic integration. Beyond trade in goods and services, I think what we are looking at is enhancing mutual investment. And I must mention in this case, in this context, the opportunities that is presented by, for example, the renewable energy segment and infrastructure segment in India, especially for Australian super funds, that I think will benefit from looking at the very predictable and high growth that India is going to experience even in the future. We will also look at a CECA that will foster innovation. It will strengthen secure supply chains and also leverage human resources. There are a number of areas which will be within the ambit of CECA, but also beyond that, cooperation in defense industries, cooperation in critical minerals, digital trade, but above all, in encouraging institutional linkages that will be the key to success in future. I think I should stop there and say that India-Australia relationship is in a transformative phase right now, and bringing the people closer together, the economies closer together is the key to unlocking the potential for future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'll now go to Matt.
Thank you. Namaste. For those visiting from interstate or overseas, welcome to Adelaide. I'm from Defence SA. We're a state government agency charged with the growing the size and economic complexity of the defence and space sectors in South Australia. And it's a testimony to the high priority we give that the State Minister for Defence for Industry and Trade was on the previous panel. For those visiting, I encourage you to pick up one of our papers this morning. I'll guarantee you there'll be a few stories about the defence sector in there, which is indicative of the absolute boom we're experiencing, in some ways, unfortunately, through uncertain geopolitical times around the world, but that results in a heavy focus on the investment of defence acquisition and capability, both here and elsewhere around the world. Now, many of the stories you read will be referring to AUKUS, which of course is the three countries, but one of the main aims of AUKUS is stability in the Indo-Pacific, which is of course in all of our best interests. More on that a little bit later. Of course, we have the Quad, a very strong relationship involving India and Australia. And in terms of defence cooperation, there's a large defence exercise happening in the north of Australia as we speak called Exercise Talisman Sabre, and India is involved in that exercise for the first time in history, providing a number of staff officers on the headquarters and planning in support of that exercise. Another sign of the close, the tight economic and strategic relationship between our countries. We're also very close in the space sector, and that's also one of my main priorities. Indeed, I would argue India and Australia probably have closer ties in the space sector than others. We recently hosted, in South Australia, we host a program called Venture Catalyst Space, which is a startup accelerator for space companies, and we've hosted a number of Indian companies in that program over the years. One is Gigantra, which looks at space traffic management, Hex 20, looking at satellite mission systems, and ResearchSat, developing satellite payloads for life sciences, Biospace Innovation, and TRIS Labs joined the accelerator this year. The University of South Australia also hosts the International Space University Southern Hemisphere Space Studies Program, and in recent years we've had many Indian students on that course, normally run in January of each year. And importantly, just last month, our state governor, Her Excellency Frances Adamson, visited India for the Indian Space Congress and had the honour of observing the launch of the Axiom 4 mission, which of course is putting an Indian astronaut into space. So these are just examples of close ties we have in our countries. I can talk a little bit more later about what the opportunities are for Indian companies in Australia and Australian companies trading with India. My good friend is actually the managing director of BA Systems in India, and had a good chat with him yesterday about how we can further develop economic cooperation between the two countries in defence and space. I really am honoured to be here at this forum and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Sanjay.
Great, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Your Excellency. I thought I'd actually start off with a bit of a personal story in framing my words. So my parents were the very first Indian family here in Adelaide, very first. They came in the mid-60s. My father joined the University of Adelaide back in the mid-60s in the Department of Mathematics. I was born shortly after, and as a first-generation Indian Australian, it continues to be very challenging for me when the Border Gavaskar Trophy is on. My parents helped found the Indian Australian Association of South Australia in the late 60s. It was called the India Club back then. And they had an instrumental role in the formation of the Hindu Society of South Australia. So it's therefore with immense pleasure and immense pride that I see Adelaide is now hosting such a significant forum. Compare that to those days in the mid to late 60s when my parents were probably the first Indians walking down the street, and cars would stop and stare at my mother wearing a sari walking down the street. So times have definitely changed in the 50 plus years since then, and it's so gratifying to see this forum being hosted here today. And so I really thank the organisers for the opportunity to be part of the WHEF 2025. So a bit about the Defence Trailblazer. We are a collaboration between two universities, the University of Adelaide, the University of New South Wales, or UNSW, over 100 companies, of which 90% are small to medium enterprises, obviously defence, and also the Department of Education. Our role and our objective is really to accelerate the translation of R&D into the hands of the Australian Defence Force. Now, why that's really important, it goes to some of the comments that Matt made about the geopolitical landscape in which we operate. The Defence Department conducted a Defence Strategic Review a few years ago where they identified that the need for defence innovation and the translation of new ideas to give the Australian Defence Force what they call an asymmetric edge, so an advantage over our adversaries, has never been greater. And so the Defence Trailblazer is really helping with that agenda. Our programs cover a broad range of areas, but we focus on creating the next generation of workforce. And I was just speaking to a mother of a Year 12 student earlier today whose daughter is looking to go into engineering in defence. And firstly, that was really pleasing to hear because we still have a challenge in Australia about female participation in engineering, and even more so in defence. So we are very focused on workforce. We're very focused on innovation and fostering new innovative companies with technologies that can give defence that asymmetric edge. And we help co-fund large-scale R&D projects between industry and academia to address some of the priority challenges that defence have got. We have about $240 million of funds under management, so we are the largest defence R&D organisation outside of government, headquartered here in South Australia. Partnership is part of our DNA, and partnership is actually part of defence's DNA. Defence cannot deliver, and defence industry cannot deliver the capabilities that defence needs without collaboration between a number of different groups. Even if we think about the big prime contractors in defence, such as BAE Systems, where Matt and I both work, or Lockheed Martin or Saab, etc., they only deliver their capabilities to defence through partnerships with their supply chain. So having a resilient supply chain that can provide them with innovative capabilities that they can then integrate together and deliver to defence is critical for Australian defence and global defence as well. As I mentioned, Defence Trailblazer is an exemplar of partnerships with over 100 different companies involved in our portfolio, as well as academic partners and defence partners as well. Now, while we're largely focused on building sovereign capabilities, we do have a number of partners who've come from overseas and have established local presence here in Australia in recognition of the opportunities that Matt alluded to that exist within the Australian defence sector. But for local companies, those 100 plus companies that are involved with Trailblazer, 90% of which are SMEs, the global markets and global partnerships are essential as well. We often say to the startups that we support, if your aim is to rely just on the Australian Defence Force to survive as a business, you will not survive. You have to be thinking global from the get-go, and you have to also be thinking dual use, other sectors. So a lot of our companies have a defence capability, but they're also looking at other sectors such as mining, agriculture, the environment, etc. I think one of the things that, India is a key market for a lot of the Australian companies because of the natural synergies between Australia and in India, I should say. Things like democracy, the education system, the strong focus on technology and STEM, a recognition that there is strength in deterrence, which is really what the Australian defence focus is about, and of course the love of cricket. So in summary, collaboration and partnerships are a part of the DNA of defence innovation, and they're definitely a part of the Defence Trailblazers DNA. Thank you.
Senator, may I jump in very quickly? I've known Sanjay for 20 years, and that's the first time I've heard that personal story about his family, so thanks for sharing that. That's great.
Now, we have on the panel the ambassador who's had a long career, but he is traditionally a chemist. I always like looking at people's university degrees. We have an engineer at the far end, and a scientist and army officer in the middle, and an old lawyer to keep them under control. But I would ask, and we'll go to the ambassador first, and then we'll go down the aisle. If you had total power or a magic wand, what's the first thing you'd do to get us on the road closer to the comprehensive agreement? Perhaps I'm really asking, what's a really critical component?
The real critical component is to, I think, in my view, not to look for a magic wand. Because we already have the magic wand. And that magic wand is the deep trust and convergence of interests. Many people often wonder why India-Australia relationship did not have a very strong economic component, let's say 10 or 15 years ago. In my understanding, it is partly a function of both of us historically looking elsewhere, but also now increasingly looking at each other and with each other in the same direction. So that, Senator, if I may say, is the magic wand. Our convergence of interests, including our economic objectives. And that's where the key lies on how we understand how we can leverage our synergistic collaborative capabilities. If you look at critical minerals, that is one of the most important areas. If you look at defense and aerospace industry, that's another area where the respective strengths can be leveraged to great effect, not just for ourselves. And if you look at the human resources, education sector, and South Australia is rich in these, and the technologies related to renewable energy and the requirement that India has. So CECA's role really is to bring these strengths together, leverage them in a strategic manner, which means not transactional, but geared towards delivering results in a predictable manner, make trade and investment sustainable and mutually beneficial, but also for benefit of the people who essentially are at the center of any government's policies in the democracies like Australia and India are.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Matt.
Thank you. I'll answer it at two levels. Firstly, at the sort of the geostrategic level, and that is each country needs to understand the other country's needs, desires, requirements, imperatives, and I would suggest that regional security would be very high on that list, and also so would trade and investment, and there will be others, cultural relationships, for example. So in any negotiation, and let's face it, it's a negotiation, it's very important to understand the needs of the other party. And then allow me to jump straight down to the tactical level. One thing we can do is improve and enhance the industrial and trade relationships we have between the two countries through and typically that can happen at any level. And in defence, we refer to the prime system integrators, the primes, the large companies, but also in India, companies like Mahindra and Tata. I know, for example, they partner in India with companies like Mitsubishi from Japan. So we need to replicate those relationships in each country, and then that sends a very strong signal to our respective governments that we're already cooperating at a business level, and that will then encourage cooperation at a governmental level.
Sanjay.
Some very similar thoughts. So certainly partnerships is key to all of this, and I think the key bit about partnerships is ensuring that there's some aligned interests. And I think one of the things that that there definitely is between the two countries is a series of aligned interests. As well as aligned interests, I think complementary skills are critical as well. So where the sum of the parts is where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because bringing together those complementary skills can really help us shift the dial. At a more practical level, I think there are entities around, just focusing on defence, there are entities that exists to help support those partnerships. So Matt's department, the Defence SA, they play an amazing role in terms of helping people connect to others who might have complementary skills or complementary capabilities and aligned interests. At a federal level, there's a group called the Office of Defence Industry Support, who similarly play that, what I call the informed connector role. And that is something that we try and do with the Defence Trailblazers as well, play that informed connector role. So I think there are definitely groups out there that can help bring together those partnerships, particularly in the defence sector, and ensure that the sum of the parts achieves some significant benefit.
Thank you, Sanjay. You led into my next question and perhaps partly answered it. And this is more, excuse me, Your Excellency, for my two at the end of the panel. You're in Bharat. You're a company that has things of interest in the defence sector in South Australia and Australia. And you've touched upon this. Where do you look? Where do you go? How easy is the path to sell and your knowledge, your expertise into the Australian defence sector? Perhaps with you, Matt, and then I'll go to Sanjay.
Thank you, Senator. To touch on your last point first, it's not easy. It's a tough market and it's a tough customer, and you need deep pockets because the acquisition cycle is measured in Chinese dynasties, not months. And to be fair, sometimes there's not a great track record of success. So that's starting on a slightly negative note, but there is potential there and there are signs of improvement. My advice is to find a partner. I would suggest a local partner. It's very difficult to engage directly with our Department of Defence acquisition arm from overseas without a local presence, and the easiest way to do that is a partner, or Defence SA sponsors something called the Defence and Space Landing Pad here at Lot 14, where we offer very attractive rental rates for countries that want to enter South Australia. Very attractive being free rent for about 6 months for a couple of people, and then very low rents for a few months to help your company establish in the local market. And by doing that, you then get an understanding of the local landscape and ecosystem, and it's quite easy then to find out who those local partners might be. There are other ways. Otis, as Sanjay referred to, another one is called ICN, the Industry Capability Network. That's effectively a tender, an online tender forum where opportunities are released. But also the Australian government does support, we have about 10 or 13 large defence companies in Australia. Most of them are foreign owned, but they're all Australian businesses, like Raytheon Australia and BA Systems. They have foreign owners, but they're good Australian companies. They are strongly encouraged to use local supply chains, so that might be the partner you're looking for, or they do release their tenders online and release much information about their upcoming opportunities. So I encourage you to engage through those. And also the simple stuff like what we're doing here. We're collaborating to talk about trade. There are many trade shows in the region. The next big one is in Sydney called the International Astronautical Congress. And at the end of the year, there's also the Indo-Pacific Maritime Forum in Sydney, the largest maritime forum in the region. And then many others around the world. They are very valuable in engaging with potential partners, engaging with customers and suppliers alike. So I encourage people, if they're interested, to hunt out those fora. And also to use agencies like Defence SA. I have a team of 30. I have senior directors in each of the defence domains: land, sea, air, space and advanced systems and cyber. We're here to provide you advice on what the opportunities might be and what sort of partners you might like to look at in Australia. So in that sense, we act as a bit of a concierge service, and we'd be more than happy to entertain companies interested in doing business locally.
Sanjay.
Yeah, I'll probably just reiterate some of the points that Matt just made. It is a hard sector to work in. There's no bones about that. It is a club. it's a very closed club and it's very difficult to get access to that club. So what you need is you basically need to try and form relationships. That can be relationships, as Matt was saying, with other companies that already are in that club. That can help open doors for you. It could be to get advisors who might have come out of that world who can then open doors for you. The reality is in defence is there's really one customer, which is the Department of Defence. And the reality is that they generally will go to one of those prime contractors that we spoke about. But those prime contractors deliver through their supply chain. So when I was at BAE, probably 70 to 80% of what we would deliver to defence came from other companies, and we would integrate those solutions together and deliver those. So getting into those prime contractors' supply chain is critically important in order to be able to be accepted into the club. I think the other thing I would highlight, just at a real practical, tactical level, is really building up what I call your defence hygiene factors. So getting those capabilities that you know are barriers to entry to work in defence, getting those sorted out, things like your security posture, things like your product being qualified to the right standards, etc. Those sorts of hygiene factors are important to really address. But as Matt pointed out before, there are lots of organisations out there that are there to help. It's really finding those connections so that you can navigate what is a complex sector.
Your Excellency.
Senator, thank you very much for indulging me on this question, but I thought it is a very important question. And though the distinguished panelists have really answered it very well, but I thought I could add just two small points here. Thank you. One is, of course, the defense sector is many things to many different people. Yes, there are aircraft carriers and submarines and tanks and everything that we know as large platforms, but there are also systems and subsystems. And perhaps when you were speaking about the Australian market, I heard the echo of what some people say about the Indian market. So perhaps the key lies in promoting collaborative development of joint technologies in systems going down the vertical chain or up the vertical chain. And I'm happy that this is an exercise which has already begun. The Defence Research and Development Organization and its Australian counterpart, as well as entrepreneurs from private sector, are engaged in this. Space is one example, defense is another. So when we talk about AI, drone or anti-drone technologies, these are the areas, so the field of innovation, including for SME, is very important as far as defense is also concerned. The second point is not only about our own requirements in terms of defense and security, but also by sheer virtue of our geographical location, where Australia and India are, and the commitment we share for regional and global peace and stability. I think one very important part, Senator, and you come from the distinguished background of Army, but one very important point and thing that Australia and India do together is to work with our other partners in the Indo-Pacific region in terms of their defense and security requirement. And I think there's a great opportunity there to collaborate for meeting the larger security and stability interests of the region, whether at the level of large platforms or small systems and subsystems. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to just go a little bit off sideways from defence, because war is destructive.
Yes.
And both our great nations have an interest in preserving the planet and reconciling with nature, which is a fundamental tenet also of Hinduism. The technologies and innovation that drive our strategic defence also can assist us in the environmental sustainability space, which is part of the theme of this conference. So I'd be interested, and I'll go to you, Your Excellency, first and then work down the table, whether you have any insights to the collaboration and possibly the necessary drive to advance both nations' living in harmony with the natural world.
Yes, absolutely. Living in harmony with the natural world.
Yes.
Absolutely. Senator, once again, thank you very much. You've touched upon an extremely important point in the bilateral agenda of India and Australia, and also a very important commitment that we separately and together have in terms of a larger responsibility to this planet, the only planet where we live. For those of you who are already aware of this, I did not repeat that India has very ambitious renewable energy program. 500 gigawatt is the target for 2030. And as we speak today, we have actually surpassed some of our commitments made at Paris. And I think a little over 50% of our installed capacity comes from renewable energy sources. But this is just the beginning. And in that segment, whether we speak of solar energy or wind or the intermediate technology and products in the entire value chain, beginning from the exploration of minerals to the recycling of the products, I think Australia is a rare example which can come in at every step of this value chain. And when we think of India, it's just not the 1.4 billion strong market. I always say it's 1.4 billion opportunities and growing. So the real opportunity here is in technological collaboration between India and Australia, in investment collaboration, so that we can bring to the market the technologies that we can develop together, develop them at the lab scale, then take them up to industry level, then commercialize them, and then upscale for the world. So the renewable energy segment, whether it is green hydrogen or production of photovoltaics or critical minerals, I think one important national task for both our countries today and for our like-minded partners is to establish secure and sustainable supply chains in the area of renewable energy. So I think this is one of the important segments of our cooperation. There are a lot more details. I don't wish to take the time right now, but if there are questions or separately we can engage. A lot is happening between India and Australia in this sphere, right down from the government level to the entrepreneurship level and development of research and collaboration.
I'll go to you, Matt, because you also have some experience in the space.
I think the answer between the two is we can do both. South Australia is known as the defence state because of our long heritage in the defence sector over 70 years, but we're also an Australian leader in renewables. 77% of energy in South Australia is generated by renewables. So we can do both. And again, that's sort of strategic. Jumping down to the lower level in defence, we refer to dual-use technologies. So they are technologies that can be used for defence or space purposes, but also another purpose. I'll link our previous discussion to this one. That my good colleague is exhibiting out in the exhibition hall, Abe Chandra. His company, Sabaran, produces medical device demonstration and training, and he's worth a visit. Firstly, he can tell you that it is a tough market to break into, even with a good product and capability like Abe's, but also that's a great example of a dual-use technology. It can be used to save lives on the battlefield, but also, of course, it can be used to save lives in a civilian context. And I know Sanjay will talk more about dual use on this question.
Sure.
Sanjay.
Thank you, Matt. So dual use is something that we emphasise with all of our industry partners. As I said before, you can't just rely on Australian Defence Force to purchase your product. So when a lot of our companies, when they are developing these innovative technologies, have multi-sector applications and use cases in mind. Just to give you an example, we fund a lot of projects in the drone warfare space, so development of new drone technology, ability for swarms, multiple drones to coordinate and collaborate for defence purposes. But those same technologies can be used in agriculture, environmental monitoring, etc. Because if you think about a country like Australia, vast lands, the ability to actually use drones to go out and survey and to communicate what they've found about the environment to each other and then ultimately back to the host is a capability that is being used as we speak now, as we speak today. Space is an area of dual use, so Earth observation is something that is used for agriculture, for mining, and for defence intelligence purposes as well. inherently dual use in its nature. We've got a project that we're funding which is looking at high-powered lasers. That project, it has a defence application, directed energy for counter-drone capability, so effectively shooting down drones using high-powered lasers. But that same capability is also being explored by this company, HB11, for nuclear fusion for energy as well. So another example of dual use. So the bottom line is a lot of the advanced technologies that are being produced for defence purposes have applications in many other sectors as well. And that's something that is historic in defence. If you go back to a lot of the capabilities that have been developed over the years, they've always had multiple applications. So I think that's absolutely critical in what we do in defence innovation.
Well, that was a fantastic end to this part of the session. The panellists are now released from the grip of my questions, and we're going to you. And I think we're going to be assisted with facilitating the question section, and then we'll argue amongst ourselves who will take the question.
Thank
Over
you.
to you.
Thank you, Chair, and the distinguished panelists. Sure, there was a really invigorating conversation and discussions that we had. What stood out for me, though, Sanjay ji, was when you said Mum was the only lady 50 years ago wearing a sari, and here we are in this room with a number of women wearing saris and proudly identifying their Hindu identity. A big round of applause from where we have come. We've come a long way. Thank you once again. To my delegates out there, while you're getting your questions ready, I request you all to keep it to maybe a line or two. And if you all do have follow-up questions, I will get our volunteers who are there around the room to help you all out with that. You can ask the questions directed at one of the participants, or the chair would then accordingly make sure that one of them answers those questions. To kickstart and get you all warmed up, I have a question, and that's for Sanjay ji. And we spoke about how the nations can collaborate in defense technology and the other sectors. In your opinion, what ways can both nations collaborate on critical and emerging technologies like AI, quantum computing, and cybersecurity, Sanjay ji?
Great. So those are three extremely important areas, and as His Excellency said earlier, there are existing collaborations that are occurring between our Defence Science Technology group and equivalents in India as well as collaborations that are occurring between academic institutions. So the soon-to-be two universities here in South Australia, Adelaide Uni and Flinders Uni, already have collaborations with institutions in India as well. And I think if I pick on those three specific areas, I often talk about the fact that modern warfare is not a warfare of aircraft, ships, tanks and missiles. It is an information warfare, and core to an information warfare is the use of data, exploitation of data using AI technology, the ability for quantum compute to then enable you to exploit that data faster, or in some cases the adversary is using quantum compute to break things like encryption, etc., your security. And the third part of that lens is obviously the need for cyber security to protect the data that is being either exploited or utilised by AI or processed by quantum computing. So those three areas are areas of critical importance globally in technology, and they happen to be three areas that both countries excel in globally. So if you think about quantum computing, Australia has two, and in fact they're partners at Defence Trailblazer, two startup companies out of University of New South Wales, I know I'm in South Australia, but University of New South Wales, that are doing some amazing things around quantum computing. And I think there's opportunities to collaborate there, as well as AI, where we have our Australian Institute for Machine Learning just down the road at Lot 14, doing some amazing things in AI, an opportunity once again to collaborate with the institutions and the startup companies in India. I should have mentioned before, and I know I'm rambling on a bit, but my cousin is one of the biggest venture capitalists in India. He has a VC fund called Unicorn Ventures. They invest purely in AI, data, and cyber companies, because those are the three areas that there is exponential growth happening in India.
Thank you. I'll now open the questions up to the floor, and
Thank you. No, I can take care of it. Thank you. My name is Balu Mutidat. I'm part of the WHGF team from New South Wales. My question is, can India and Australia create a joint innovation fund or accelerator specifically for SMEs developing dual-use technologies for both civilian and defense applications?
Maybe Matt? Is that fair to give that one to you, Matt?
Yeah, of course. I think the answer is yes, we could. We should. There will be a few challenges. Immediately springing to mind is ownership of intellectual property, but frankly that is overcomeable. Funding is important. In Australia we have the Advanced Strategic Capabilities Accelerator, ASCA. They're spending $3.6 billion over 10 years in advanced technologies, rapid development. And I know India will have similar programs. Under AUKUS, there is talk of similar collaborations with organisations like the DIU in the US and DASA in the UK. There's no reason that we couldn't do it, and I'll link that to something that Santo was just talking about. It's a bit of an Americanism, but it talks about capability at the speed of relevance. And when you look at AI and cyber and quantum, our adversaries are developing these capabilities very, very rapidly. And we can't afford to go through a traditional, laborious, lengthy acquisition cycle to deliver capability to address something their adversary developed 10 years ago. So this needs to be done rapidly. So the way to do that rapidly is collaboration with the best. It doesn't matter if it's in the Quad or AUKUS or another alliance. Let's work with the best and deliver this capability rapidly.
Might just add to that if that's okay.
Yes, Santo, you just add to that and then we'll go to that question.
Sure. So I think the short answer to that question is yes, we definitely should, and we can sort out the mechanisms for doing it. If I look at parallels in the NATO countries, there's a NATO Innovation Fund, which is billions of dollars. That NATO Innovation Fund funds a group called Diana, which is a defence accelerator program. And what they do is, irrespective of which of the NATO countries that innovation comes from, they will help incubate and grow and accelerate that capability using that fund. Why can't we do something like that through a Quad? It's certainly part of my aspiration for Defence Trailblazer 2.0, so it wasn't a pre-prepared question, but it's certainly something I would be personally quite keen to explore.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Hi, my question is, I'm a SME. My name is Chetan. I'm an SME and I supply goods right now from India to Australian defence industries on the HMAS Success and those ships. We would like to invest into Australia, provided there is a guaranteed prospect for us to capitalize on the current defence projects that are happening. What incentive, or what is my starting point is what I'm after. Where do I start for local manufacturing?
Thank you for the question. It's a really good question. Unfortunately, there are no guarantees. It's a very competitive market, and whatever the nature of the products you're selling, it's highly likely that you'd be selling into a prime company who would have a large contract, support of one of those ships, for example, and those companies will have competitive acquisition processes via typically requests for tender. So if you have a good quality product at a competitive price that you can support through life, then you have a very good chance of winning one of those tenders. The way to improve your chance of winning those tenders is to understand the landscape, sounds like you do already, and also then develop relationships with the people you're selling to. And it sounds like you've got a good business. You probably know how to do that better than I do. It's old-fashioned business development, understanding your customer, understanding the landscape, promoting the quality and the competitiveness of your product. And some of the things we've talked about, Otis, the ICN network, engagement with the primes, networking, conferences, trade shows, I suggest all of those are good places to be on your list of places to start.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Sanjay. Is that you want to add anything there?
No, I think Matt's covered that very well. Thanks.
Ambassador?
Turn it on.
I think a couple of very quick points here. One is, I think Matt is right. I think the market is very competitive. What sometimes does happen is, and this is what we are beginning to contemplate in areas, we are establishing innovation hubs. For example, there is one between Monash and IIT Hyderabad on the critical mineral side. So those are research ventures, but the next step obviously is to help the small and medium entrepreneurs, which was also a question from here. And dual use is also interesting. I think, I don't know how many of you would know that the electronic voting machines which are used in India, for example, are actually made by an enterprise which is related to the sensitive technologies sphere. And similarly, the Bhabha Atomic Research Center made the cyclotron, which treats cancer. And this is something which which India has had the privilege of sharing with some of our developing partners. So the technologies are obviously, dual use. It's up to the governments to understand how to bring in the entrepreneurship of the people and their skills together. I think some sort of a fund is a very good idea, and maybe there could be further consideration or understanding of how to get into that type of a possibility.
Thank you. We've got time for 2 more questions before we move on to the next session. So,
My name is Lax Pathy. I've been here for the last 53 years. I know Jagan's family from day one. They have been extremely helpful to the Indian community, Jagan Mazumdar and Maya Mazumdar. And Matt Opie suggested India is a very difficult market to get into. That's the impression I get from his speech. But I would like to point out that it's equally difficult to get into Australian market. When one Indian enterprise wanted to expand its coal interest in Australia, every hurdle was put in its place, including some political parties' intervention. And when India wanted to import uranium, there were so much hurdles, and until about 2006, they were not agreeable to send any uranium to India. But at the same time, Australia was very happy to get some foreign interest to own uranium mines in India. Now, the second part of the question is, the ambassador talked about, the High Commissioner talked about EVM. That's one of the best things to bring into Australia. With 24 million people, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get an election result. From 600 million people voting, the results comes in 24 hours. That's all I had to say.
The audio wasn't very good, but I think the gist was the difficulty of entering our market.
I think so, yes.
So I guess I could reiterate what we've been touching on, and that is it is a difficult market to enter. And just repeat some of my earlier comments about the importance of local partnerships, and you sort of, in terms of, I think you also referred to the political landscape. Again, I'll quickly pass to the Senator back to answer any questions on that one, but please persist.
Well, I suppose I have to do some work since I'm up here. not only do we share a love of cricket, we share large bureaucracies, and we both share a democratic system that drives a bureaucracy. If we were in Bharat now, and that question could come from the floor from an Australian entering India, which says to all of us that we must do more, not only to build the bonds of friendship, but to break down the barriers of trade. And that's why we have conferences like this. But having lived a life, the latter half of my life in the political system, I do share your pain.
May I just add?
And I will throw to the Ambassador for probably more measured comment.
No, they cannot surpass the political people's representatives in being more measured. But just one sentence here that the one commonality, another commonality which is important for business that India and Australia share is the rule of law. And other than the bureaucracy and the political system that drives the bureaucracy, I think it is the rule of law and the similarity of the legal systems that we operate, which is a big factor for the business to consider and be encouraged from. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Hi, namaskar to everyone here. My name is Ashish Wagle. I couldn't help but start reading this book here, and out of the 8 sutras that have been described here, one of them says, defeating enemy, defending citizens, but the rest are not related to defense. So often, my question is, do we think that we often make defense a dominant part at the cost of peace building, education, healthcare, and environmental care? Meaning, what about the defense of justice, equality, nature, human, and many other things that are mentioned in this? Considering that we are in a World Hindu Economic Forum, and that's the Hindu Manifesto, my question is, do we allocate too much time and money to defense rather than peace building? Open question to everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay. Too much time and money to defense.
Time and money on defense. Yeah, that is a philosophical question, probably beyond the capability of the panel. I know the Ambassador and I are men of reading. All of us in political life, and if I was in the subcontinent and a member of Parliament, I'd probably be saying the same. It's always a tragedy in a modern state to have to spend any money on defence, but it is an unfortunate necessity in a challenging world. Not all nations on this planet share the values that both our great nations do. And thus, from ancient kings and emperors, they were tortured by this decision of how much to allocate to protect their people and how much to assist them for prosperity. We have focused on defence because we have 2 experts on the panel in defence. And that's why I asked the question about dual use. I would like to see the partnership focus on health, because both our populations are very keen to provide the best for their children. So education and health, I think, will be, in addition to defence, 2 key pillars of our relationship, because we share the same love of family and care for not only our elderly but our children. Now, I probably haven't answered your question, but I've probably given you an insight to where my mind and soul is at. Your Excellency, would you like to add to that? Or?
Thank you, Senator. I don't think I can add much to what you have said, but I think, first of all, I would like to say that namaste to my Nepali bhai. Tapai sanche cha, ramro cha. Dhere khushi lagcha. Now, so the thing really is that I think this is an eternal debate, as the Senator said. But we also have to have answer to our contemporary realities. If you look at the policy that the Government of India is trying to pursue, not just domestically but internationally, and I'm very glad to see our brothers and sisters from other parts of Asia, from other parts of the world, including our Nepali brothers and sisters whom I can recognize from the dresses, but I'm sure there are people from other parts of the world also. What we are trying to promote is a holistic policy for connecting people, connecting through economy, connecting through infrastructure, connecting through ideas. And the role of diaspora in that is very important. But I would underline what Honorable Senator has said about the importance of health. And if you look at the mission which Prime Minister Modi launched a few years ago in the presence of the Secretary General of the United Nations, life. The life is style for environment. I think that speaks for itself. We all, first of all, have to have a harmony internally, then only we can have harmony with nature. So the development has to be sustainable, and whether it is renewable energy or whether it is agriculture or health, I think these are the areas in which we collaborate. Probably we could perhaps speak a little more about it so that our people understand that while the two governments are pursuing collaboration and development, it is not at the cost of other areas.
One last question. We're going to be running out of time. If you can make it quick, one last question, if you can keep it under 1 minute, sir.
My name is Rakesh Raizada. I'm coming from Melbourne, from Vedic Global. My question to, what I want to ask is, India has shown a way through Operation Sindoor that without collateral damage, they can cure, they destroyed the terrorist places. So India and Australia being the biggest democracy, are they collaborating so that the peace in this entire region is there?
Can I just interject here, sir? Thank you for your question, but I think it is beyond the scope of the conference here that we are discussing about politics, geopolitics. We can have the discussion while we are at lunch. I thank the floor for having asked some really hard-hitting questions, some philosophical questions to our distinguished panel here. I request Senator Andrew McLaughlin to summarize the discussion and take it forward, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the panellists and for putting up with my questions. You did an exceptional job. I would like to just finish on the note that these trade agreements are just pieces of paper put together by two nations. It will have no life unless you breathe into it. It is your endeavours that will make this occur. Your partnerships, your friendships, your hard work. You're the bridge between our two nations, and I encourage you, despite all the challenges and difficulties, to keep pursuing those friendships, because the relationship between our two great nations is critical for not only world peace, but stability, but also bringing joy to our respective populations. Love and joy. Can I again thank the panellists and also your patience with me and us. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank all the distinguished guests for their remarkable insights on CECA, that's the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. Put your hands together while they take the seat, and we're ready for the next set of, in the program. Dear delegates, this concludes our engaging session on the Bharat-Australia CECA, that's the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. I'll just wait while we get the photographs. Okay, so we now invite all the delegates to make their way to the exhibition hall where lunch is being served. For our delegates, please wait, I've got 30 seconds more. For our delegates with dietary requirements of no onion, no garlic, and Jain food, please proceed to the food counter opposite the World Hindu Congress 2026. That's Expo booth number 26. 26. Enjoy the specially curated menu and take this opportunity to explore the 40 exhibition booths like 3i Strategy, Mortgage Choice from Jagdish Lakhani, Royal Indian Groceries, SA Tiles and Decor, JD Impex, Care Immigration, Sujan Studio, and Smart Chambers, featuring a range of businesses, innovations, and services from Australia, Bharat, and the global Hindu community. This is a valuable chance to connect with entrepreneurs, learn about new ventures, and expand your professional network. So do make the most of it. Put your hands together for our partners, organizing partner, the Government of South Australia and Zoho Corporation, platinum sponsor Shubham Tanks and Liners, and our gold sponsor Sharaf Global. Thank you for supporting such a vibrant platform for global engagement. Our next session is Achieving Global Health, Access to Affordable Medicines, Services and Devices. We will begin promptly at 2 p.m. right here in the main plenary hall. We request all delegates to be seated by 1:45 so we can start on time. Enjoy your lunch and exhibition visit. See you back shortly. Thank you. Dhanyawad.